No one knew what was happening, who did this, how it happened. And for those of you who are not aware of the Bridgerton series, this is a monster. Like what's happening? The monster basically forced to just have a better life. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Mabel and this is Mabel Journals, where we talk about books and we talk about journals. And in today's video, I am going to talk about the 10 books that I read. Actually, I'm going to talk about all the books I read in March with the exception of 2 books, and I'll get to that when we get there. In today's video, I am going to be talking about a few books that I read in the month of March. Like I said earlier, I read 10 books, but I am only going to talk about 8 of them. And I'm skipping the first book that I read this month because it is by an author that I do not agree with a lot of the things that they do. I do think that, you know, even if you have books that are by problematic authors or whatever it might be, I think you can still read them if you want. But I definitely feel like if you have a platform where you're talking about your books to multiple people, which is what I'm doing, I want to do less harm, as least amount of harm as possible. So I am absolutely not going to be talking about authors that I believe are problematic. Yes, I will read their books if I already purchased them before realizing this, but I'm not going to talk about them. But anyway, the second book I read in the month of March is The Devil and Mrs. Davenport. This is by Paulette Kennedy. I really enjoyed this book. This was sent to me by Lake Union, and I honestly did not expect a lot of what happened in this book. We follow our main character. Her name is Loretta Davenport, and we're in the 1950s. Women have little to no rights. Obviously, they can't have their own bank account. Their husband basically owns them once they get married, and their father owns them before they're married. We start off in the book where Loretta has this sickness, or this, I think she has the flu or she has something. And her husband is obviously worried for her, but more than anything, he's worried for himself because he's just like, okay, so when am I gonna have my wife back? He doesn't say it in that way, but it's just, he does. And so Loretta's just like, you're right, like when am I gonna be the person that I'm supposed to be for this family and all of that? And she ends up getting better. But there's a lingering symptom that stays, and that she has like very vivid dreams, very vivid, just like hallucinations. A crime happened near them, and what happened was someone was unalived, and there were no leads. Like no one knew what was happening, who did this, how it happened. And so it was kind of like a closed case. And so Loretta ends up having these dreams about the place. And the person who had passed also came to Loretta in ghost form and kind of like talked to her or said something that gave her clues as to where, you know, everything happened. And she informed the authorities, like she called the authorities and said, hey, look here, anonymously. And they looked there and everything was exactly as she said. And so she tells her husband, like, hey, like I've been having these dreams ever since I was sick. And, you know, I was the one who called about this, you know, this mystery that was happening that no one knew. I was the one who helped. And he immediately was just like, you know, something's wrong with you. Like we need to get you checked, like with a doctor or something. And her husband is a Bible professor or something like that. I don't remember. Like he teaches something religious. And obviously doesn't want his wife to be talking to ghosts and all of that. So he kind of just like makes it seem like she's going crazy. This one kind of gave me little hints of lessons in chemistry. Nothing super crazy, but it also had like a mystery aspect to it and like that magical realism aspect to it as well, which I think is interesting. And overall, I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4-star, and again, it just surprised me. You know, you read the title and you have an idea of what you think it's going to be about, and then you finish the book and you read the title and you're like, got it. I understand now. So absolutely recommend this one. Check triggers though. Always check triggers. Even if I don't say it, check triggers. The next book I read is probably my least favorite books that I've been severely disappointed by. But this particular book, I expected so much. I really did. And if you're not already aware, I'm making my way through the Bridgerton series. And this is the 5th book, and this is Eloise's story. So whether you read the books or you see the series, you know Eloise is a very independent, very outspoken, very just a great character in my opinion. And I know there's a lot of like rumblings about her and Penelope's friendship. In the books, I feel like the friendship is a little bit different. I still enjoy Eloise as a character. I don't think she's perfect. I don't think Penelope's perfect either, but I definitely did enjoy her in these books. And this one was so disappointing. For those of you who are not aware of the Bridgerton series, basically we follow the Bridgertons, which is a family in the 1700s, I want to say, that historical time period. And the Bridgertons is a very well-known and respected, very wealthy and well-off family. And the Bridgertons has the mother named Violet, Violet and her husband, I forget her husband's name, but they both have a bunch of kids, and every kid that they have, they name them alphabetically. So the very first one was Antony, the second one was Benedict, third one was Colin, then they had their first daughter, Daphne, then they had Eloise, then they had Francesca, then they had Gregory, then they had Hyacinth, and I think Hyacinth was the last child that they had. And so, of course, there's all of these kids, all of these storylines that you go through. And the thing here is Violet and her husband, I forget his name, he and her had like actual true love. And I say had because her husband did pass away. The point that I'm trying to make here is that all of them have their own little love story, their own way of just kind of like coming out into the world. We follow other families, but the Bridgertons is the family that we follow primarily. So as each child is getting married, you know, Eloise is the second daughter, so she is right after Daphne, but she does not want to get married, and she does not want to lose herself in a guy. And so, of course, as you go through every single one of these books, you're assuming that she's going to get, you know, she's going to have like a real heavy love story in order to help have her settle down. And it's anything but. It's it was a very disappointing book to read. I was not at all happy with this. I finished it. I think I didn't give this a 1 star because I was happy to be back into this like Bridgerton world. You definitely watch the series and you have like a very good understanding of what the world looks like just based on the series. But more importantly, you have a very good understanding based on the personalities that are like written out and all of that. And so I was expecting so much more from this book. I was expecting so much more from this book, and Eloise did not get her love story, the story that she deserved. And I'm really hoping that the series, like the TV series, does something to make this better, or at least explains it a little better as to why it happened the way that it did. I don't want to give anything away because, like I said, this is the 5th book in the whole series, so me giving anything away would definitely be a spoiler if you haven't read them. But I was not happy. I do plan on making one video on the whole series, similar to I am working on a Shatter Me series video where I just talk about the Shatter Me series. So you will eventually see that. And again, like I said, you will eventually see a video specifically just about this Bridgerton series, which I'm excited to do. But I'm going to finish, obviously, the series first, and then I'll talk about it. Anyway. The next book I'm not going to talk too much about because, like I said, I am going to be doing a video specifically for this series. But this next book I read is Defy Me, which is by Tahara Mafi. And I loved this series so much, and this was my favorite book. I had originally given this a 4 star, but I ended up giving this a 5 star, and I gave this a 5 star after I gave another book a 5 star, so this technically isn't my first 5 star of the year, and I'll explain it when I get to the other book. But I did enjoy this series so much. I absolutely loved it. And like I said, I think this book is not given as much credit as it should as a book, you know, within the series. A lot of people talk about, I think it's Ignite Me, and they also talk about Believe Me, which is the last book or the last novella. But this one was my favorite. I feel like this one was the best, like, put together. I felt like a lot of the revelations in this one I did not expect, and it just changed the whole dynamic of the whole entire series, just this book. So, next one I read was Reveal Me, which is in this book. Reveal Me is technically a novella That's right after Defy Me, and it is following the perspective of one of the characters within Defy Me. I'm going to talk about this in the video that I mentioned I'm gonna do for the Shatter Me. I already recorded it, I'm just editing it, but I am gonna talk about the novellas and how important they are. But what I will say is Reveal Me is in the perspective of another character within the book. It's not technically in the same, like it's not repeating the same thing as this one in someone else's perspective like a lot of the novellas do. It does say some new things within it, which is why I always recommend the novellas. But anyway, I ended up giving that a 3-star. Thought it was solid, thought it was good, really good. Next book I read is Imagine Me, which is in the series as well. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It is the last book in the Shatter Me series. Like I said, I will have a video all about the Shatter Me series where I definitely will talk about all of these books. But because it's like the last books in the series, I don't want to talk about them because it will be a spoiler. But I gave this one a 4-star. The next book I read was Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, and I absolutely loved this one. I thought it was so well done. This was the first 5-star of the year for me, and I had given Defy Me a 4-star or a 4.5-star originally, and then I read this one. I gave this one a 5-star, and then afterwards, as I was doing my Shatter Me video, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna give Defy Me a 5-star. So that's why I consider Pet my first 5-star technically. It's very short, it's about 280 pages maybe, and we follow our main character, Jam. Jam is a trans black teen, and Jam is just basically, you know, just figuring out who they are in life, and a character you can connect with because there's a lot of questions that this character asks themselves, you know, as they go on through life. But the interesting thing is that they live in a town called Lucille, and Lucille is known to be very like progressive town. Everyone in Lucille is a good person. Everyone in Lucille has, like, everyone is founded by angels, and there's no monsters. And when I say monsters, I mean bad people. I mean people who hurt marginalized people, people who founded the town under false pretenses, people who abuse, hurt, anything a bad person would do. That is what a monster is, and that's what I'm referring to when I say a monster. Our main character, Jam, is at their mom's studio. Jam's mom's name is Bitter, and Bitter creates like all of these like very alarming paintings of like monsters and, you know, just scary things and all of that. And so I guess Jam was doing something and cut themselves doing it, and a little bit of the blood got on the painting, and this caused the painting to come to life. Jam sees this monster come out of his painting and automatically thinks like, this is a monster, like what's happening? The monster introduces itself and says, my name's Pet, I'm not a monster. I'm a monster hunter. And that's kind of like where it goes. And one of the big question, or like the big overlying theme of the book, is answering the question, how do we find monsters if we don't believe that they exist? And it's such a great like understanding of society, understanding of the world. Like if we don't believe that something exists, even though it's clearly affecting a lot of people and hurting a lot of people, how can we possibly ever stop it? It's just like mic drop. It's just such a great book. I thought it was just so well put together, and Jam might be young, but their like ideas and way of thinking throughout the novel is just chef's kiss. It was really great. I loved it. And like I said, it's a 5-star. And I enjoyed it so much that I picked up Bitter, because Bitter is also part of the series. It's actually the prequel to Pet. And if you remember, Bitter is actually Jam's mother. And so Bitter, like I said, has this power to create art that comes to life if blood is put on it. And so that's basically what Bitter Story is about. But Bitter Story is more like revolutionary based. It definitely follows a few more characters. You see Jam's father in there as well, and other love interests that Bitter had, you know, before Jam's father, other people as well. And there's just like a few different things happening within it, and it basically tackles the question of revolution and when do we take a stance, when do we fight, how do we fight, and when is fighting necessary. It's just such a great book as well. I gave this one a 3-star. I thought Pet was so much better and out of this world. Bitter was also great. I thought that it was really well written, but I definitely enjoyed Pet a lot more. The next book I read is The Waves Take You Home by Maria Alejandra Barrios Velez. Didn't want to miss one there. I enjoyed this one. I thought that it was very well done as well. This follows our main character, Violeta, and Violeta basically grows up in Colombia with her mother and her grandmother and is basically forced to just have a better life than what her grandmother and mother had. Sends her off to the United States. Obviously, like, Violeta's whole life was in Colombia with her family, but also she had a very, very deep love for someone in the town as well. And she was forced to leave that love as well. And you know, Violeta ends up not having the best relationship with her grandmother and mother until one day she finds out that her grandmother passed and she has to go back and kind of just like, you know, do all of the funeral arrangements, you know, fix any loose ends and all of that. And these loose ends that she left are kind of just like picking up again, but she already has an established life in the United States. She has a boyfriend she loves. She has a job that she, you know, is working towards. Overall, I thought it was a great read. I thought it was very, very interesting how everything tied together. And it just gave me a very good understanding of how, you know, there isn't really a perfect ending to anything, and it's just really about following yourself and all of that. So I definitely recommend this one. I thought it was really good. I gave this a 3.5. So that concludes all of the books that I read in March. Like, the goal is to read a little bit more next month. Hopefully this month I get through a lot more books. That concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if there's any books that I've talked about that you've read or that you're interested in or that you're planning on reading, or maybe a book that you've never heard of and you're just like, oh, this one sounded interesting. I never heard of this book, or something like that. Just let me know in the comments. I'm always interested in reading those and talking to you all through there. And yeah, that concludes this video. I will see you all on the next one. If you stayed till the very end, leave me a smile emoji. You know, I need a little love and positivity in these days. So if you can leave me a smile emoji, I would love that. And I will see you all on the next one. Bye. We're like mid-April right now, but yeah, this is March. So, okay. Let's just make sure I'm focused. Okay. That, you know, dresses for women type thing. And of course, there's very little to no rights for women, but you know, in this story, they are, you know, given other, I'm not gonna go into that. Always. Oh, this is so long. Let's just scratch all of that. Start now.